much to my surprise, we've made it to the season finale of Tulsa King called Happy Trails. I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the final episode of the season right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. I think I said in the last episode that this would be the penultimate episode because I thought we were getting 10 episodes. But in fact, it's season finale, which sort of leaves a bit of a mixed bag for me because there are a lot of story threads that are just kind of like left on the table or that don't matter, and makes me a little bit more angry at the season as a whole than what we finally sort of get at the end. I think the button that ends at the end of this is great. The road to get there and how we got there and all some of the stuff that happens between kind of like, well, that felt cheap or easy. Let me explain. So this episode starts with a flashback. We get to see the actual incident that got Dwight put into prison, and he's not wrong. Stuff that he said to Margaret about the situation of sort of mercy killing a friend so that they wouldn't be burned alive holds weight. Not quite as clean as he said, but it does hold weight. Chicky and his right hand, and Armand was there as well, were roughing up a gentleman named Ripple. And they were beating him up pretty bad. Had him handcuffed to a railing and were branding him and just full on torturing him. And Armand calls Dwight just to let him know, like, hey, yo, you need to get over here. I'm going to give you the address. You need to get over here because Chicky's lost it. In this scenario, the stuff that Chicky told us in the previous episodes where he's like, I wanted to be a regular person or a regular man. None of that holds weight because with this scene and the way that he's been acting, he is fully invested in this life. And so if there was a point where he had some casualty or some hesitation to being a part of this life or like, hey, I wanted to do this, it would have happened earlier. And clearly he didn't because he seemed fully invested. He was fully about torturing. He was fully about being that nutcase. So it is a story beat that does not make sense and that now looks out of place even more with the season being over. Because truthfully, it looks like Chicky gets off on being this roughhouse and this full-on mafia man. But Dwight arrives and he sees what's going on. He's trying to like, hey, yo, we got to get this guy out of the cuffs. And Dwight's playing this game. He's like, I can't find the cuffs. I can't find the cuffs. And then a fire starts. And so they leave and Dwight's kind of there with him. He's trying to shoot the cuffs, but they're like titanium. They don't shoot off. And so he decides on his own to just kill Ripple. I say mercy killing, in fact, because typically in those situations, at some point, Ripple would have been like, hey, please, I don't want to burn alive. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. He was still trying to get out of there. And so the situation could have probably not been murdered because the cops were already downstairs. I feel like one of them would have had some type of key. It just didn't quite make sense in the speed that they had on. But I can get where Dwight's brain was coming from. And he felt like he mercy killed him. And that's what happened for him. So that was the flashback. In present day, we join and the FBI is questioning Dwight. They have him kind of jammed up. And they had him all overnight. And they've been asking the questions. And even stonewalling him. I'm not giving you any information. I don't know who Walter is. I don't know any of the information you're talking about. I got nothing for you. His crew then finds someone to go in there and kind of get him out of there, get him out of that situation. Tyus meets him and takes him away, lets him know that Stacy's doing well, and he drops him off at Stacy's hospital. He meets Stacy and sees how she's doing, brings him some flowers, and just says, hey, look, I know we have a really weird relationship. I get it, but I owe you. I owe you my life. You saved me, and I'm going to do everything humanly possible to save you and get Waltrip. And she's like, look, I didn't tell you this, but Waltrip's got a lot of money. A ton of money. He's probably going to be in the wind. You're not going to be able to find him. And Dwight's like, I will. I'll make this right. He kisses her on the forehead and leaves. They have a very contentious and back and forth relationship, and it seems genuine on both parts. It seems like, yeah, they're both broken animals, but they do have a genuine care for each other. Dwight seems to be more caring and giving towards her, whereas Stacy is a little bit more standoffish. She cares about Dwight, but she's a little bit more standoffish. And we'll see on the back end that all in all, at the end of the day, she's going to always look out for herself before caring or thinking about anyone else. Waltrip meets with the remainder of the biker crew that he has that's not locked up and says, like, we're declaring war on Dwight. And there's a little bit of hesitation from one of the leaders there. He shoots him. So not too much hesitation remains. But he is looking out for blood. And then we see a sequence where Armand meets Dwight and lets him know that Chicky has arrived. And Dwight's like, what? He's been here? He's here? Because he let him know in the last episode he was coming. So I don't know why he was super confused, but I guess the timing was earlier than what Dwight thought. And Dwight asked Armand, like, do you want to lay low? And Armand goes on this whole thing like, no, I don't. I laid low last time. When a few weeks after you got locked up, Chicky asked to see me. I came in strapped up. I was ready. I was in my car, strapped up, ready to go. And then I got to the place to meet, and I froze. I couldn't get out of the car, and I just started driving. I drove all the way till I got up to Tulsa. I'm a runner. That's what I've done. I've always run. Even when I saw you at the mall, Dwight, my first instinct was to like bail and run. And which is why some of the conversations that he's had with his wife, who wants to run, he's like, no, I'm not doing that again. Like, I'm done running. That's why he's sort of saying, nope, I'm here. I'm not running. I'm here for you. And so Tyson, Dwight, and Armand go to see Chicky, Goody, and his number one. And in that, on the roof, it's a bit contentious. Dwight's kind of like, look, you exiled me. So you don't get to say what's happening over here. You exiled me and I started making money. And I don't want you here. And I'm now my own man. And then he's like, hey, yo, Goody, you got 3 seconds to hang out with this Kojak reject, or you can come with me. And Goody decides to come with him. I said in the last episode that I didn't think Goody was fully invested in being with Dwight. I mean, with being with Chicky. That said, this sequence is really too easy. Like, this is terrible writing, honestly. They went through so much back and forth. Chicky's whole point was like, I'm gonna like F this dude. I'm going back to him and get him. For them to get on the rooftop, have this conversation, and then that'd be the end of it. And Dwight says, hey, these people here are going to escort you back to the airport, and I never need to see you again. And we don't. That's how the season ends. That is the end of Chicky. So all the stuff that we have had in this entire season has sort of built Chicky up to be this martyr of a kid who didn't want to do this life, but lived that life, which doesn't make sense, as I said. Then we come to this, and he's like, hey, I'm going to come down there. And it's like, we sort of feel the walls closing in on Dwight. It ends so easily for him. And my first thought was like, hey, that's dangerous. If you have your whole crew, you've taken his crew, you've lessened his crew, you got your whole thing going here, and you send him back to New York, your daughter is still there. Come to find out later, as I will get to soon, that didn't matter either. This is the final sequence that we see Chicky and his crew, and all the buildup of that family meant literally nothing, which is interesting. An interesting choice. Dwight then circles the troops. He meets with them all at the bar and kind of saying like, yo, I'm the general. And for all of this to work, for us to go to war, because we're about to go to war, we have to be like a family. And Grace shows up. She wasn't really originally a part of the meeting it was all the guys. Then she shows up and he's like, you want to be here? He's like, yep, I'm here, Anna. And so he kind of starts galvanizing them. He basically gets his Braveheart speech to them. And they all kind of feel it and get warm inside. But their big goal is to shut down the bar for a little bit because they know that, they're about to be attacked. They know that sooner or later, Waltrip's going to come for them. Happens to be sooner because Dwight sort of gives a push for that to happen. Because Dwight asks Bodhi, and this sort of brings in the piece why Bodhi gave, writing-wise, it brings in the piece why Bodhi was so quickly willing to give up what he was doing with Bitcoin and whatnot. It's the story because now Dwight knows, like, hey, he has all this money in offshore accounts. I know a guy who can kind of attack that. Other than that, doesn't really explain why Bodhi would just outright give that up. Now it does because they're more of a business partners in their family, but at the moment he did it, especially after being interrogated, didn't make sense. But now it does, and it fits the story purposes. So Dwight asks him, like, hey, yo, can you attack these accounts? They're with the ATF, by the way. And he's like, there's a chance. A little back and forth, but yes, he can do it. He does it and wipes the files, takes all the money from him. Now, the ATF, they're looking at those accounts at that moment, so they see it all disappear, and then we subsequently see that Waltrip also was looking, and he's furious. We don't see any more coke being used, but I'm sure he was coked up out of his mind, losing all his money. Once all that money is cleared, Dwight has Tyson send a card to Stacy in the hospital, saying this isn't enough, but I can't repay you. And has a flash drive in it. The flash drive has $1 million in coin, and Bitcoin has $1 million for her to use. So for her, that works because in his mind, he's like, look, you're probably going to lose your job because they're going to see that you had some type of association with me. So your pension is gone. Hopefully this $1 million kind of assuages that a little bit and allows you to kind of go on and live your life. And I'm sorry for putting you in this. When he comes out, when Tyson comes out, Dwight kind of does the thing again with Tyson and says, hey, are you sure you want to be this? The thread that we've sort of had this entire time where Tyson, are you sure you want to do this? Tyson kind of just, look, I'm my own man now. Like I used to just didn't even know that there were two different threes at 3 o'clock in the day. Like I would come home, I would go to work, come home, get high, and go back to sleep and just rinse and repeat. I had no purpose. I had no life. Now I am my own man. I'm my own boss. I have my own place. You've given me a life that I was not able to live. This is all fine and well, but this is the same thing that was said 4 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago. Like we've heard this particular back and forth with Dwight and Tyson plenty of times. Nothing has grown or changed in their scenario that needed to have this piece again. And for some odd reason, all the ups and downs of the father, while I don't want anything to happen to Tyson because he's one of my favorite characters, some type of tragedy should have occurred to Dwight's crew to make all of this feel a little bit more weight. You'll see as we go into the next sequence, it's all too easy for them. Like they get away with everything until the very end. But the actual nobody on his team is kind of hurt in this, and it just feels a little too clean for them to get there. There's a comeuppance, but the actual stuff that happens to the crew feels simple. But Waltrip makes an assault on the bar, and they're all ready. They got it home alone up with like some tripwires and some gas to go off and shoot. And pretty cool action sequence. It's a bit slow because Stallone can't move like he used to, but I don't know how expensive that Phil Collins "Air in the Night" song is, but I imagine that cost a pretty penny. But it plays pretty well over the lay. But they attack. They pretty much get the best of them pretty easily. Armand is hit, and it looks bad. But Grace sort of saves. She's a killer. Like Grace is about that life. She saves Dwight a few times in the scenario. But then eventually Dwight gets a hold of Waltrip. They have a couple of punches. Waltrip's almost like Batman and the Joker. He can't fight without his crew, so he's just getting beat up. And then Dwight pushes Waltrip's head against like a hook, and it's essentially decapitates him. But to make sure, he then shoots him in the head violently. It looks good. It's a nice, like, yep, we're done with that. Again, I don't have too much of a problem with the Waltrip thing. I think it did come to a satisfying conclusion. There was an up and down for that. But as bad as he was made out to be, it seemed like the payoff or the fight for the town didn't seem as balanced or strong compared to all the buildup that we had for it. We then do a thing that I loathe. We do a 3-month time jump. And in that, it's essentially like a coda. It plays like, hey, after everything went down, this is sort of what happened. Now, mind you, again, Chicky, gone. We never see him again in the rest of this episode. Now, the threat of Waltrip, also gone. What we get in this 3-month time jump is that we see that things have gone better for Dwight. There has been a reestablishment of connection between Tina and I. So the thought of Chicky going back to New York and harming Tina, he just goes back in his hole. Maybe he does just give up the life, but it doesn't make sense considering how into it he was in all the scenes that we've seen before. But Dwight and Tina seem to be on a good foot. She's calling him dad. Cody and Ryan, the grandkids, are there. They're calling him grandpops. They're at the stable with Margaret, and they're riding horses. He just seems to be having a good go of life. Things seem to have turned around for him. The casino has been primary thing that they've been working on. So the cabaret and the casino is now up and ready. It's called the Bread to Buck Casino. Everybody lived. Armand is well. Grace is there. Tyson's there with the lady. You got Mitch singing. You got Goody there being the pit boss. Like they seem to be on the up and up. Everything seems to be going as it should perfectly well. And then we see a sequence where Stacy is being interviewed or interrogated by the ATF. She's been investigating, and they're kind of just like, "Look, you've made some improper decisions, and you may have been in improper contact with Dwight, but you've been a stellar ATF agent outside of that. We're going to give you your job, but with a six month probation. So she still gets her pension, she still gets everything that she's kind of been like living for. She still gets all of that, but there is one condition, and it goes to black. And then we see a sequence later. Now, I automatically knew what the condition was. It wasn't like this was like, oh my god, I can't believe she would do this. She's a person who looks out for herself, and her whole goal has always been, I need to keep my pension. I need to keep this. I want to be kind of vested. Be damned with my relationship with you. You've been sort of a hot fire for me, so I have to throw you under the bus to do so. I will. And boy, does she. Dwight is having a first dance that he's never really got to have with Tina inside the casino. And Tina's like fully in. She's like, yep, I'm here with my dad. This is what I'm going to do. And they tell him that you have a visitor outside. And the visitor is Stacy. And he's like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you. You look great. Stacy just says, I'm sorry. And then you see all the ATF folks show up. And they arrest Dwight because they arrest him on bribery of a federal agent based on the $1 million flash drive that he gave Stacy that she had to turn him in for. The only reason, we all know this, the only reason that the ATF gave her job back is because they knew that she would be able to turn him in. Like they knew that she had enough stuff that if they made it worth her while to keep her job and keep her pension, that she would turn him in. I can guarantee you that she's going to be the laughing stock or the desk jockey for that. She's not going to be taken in any seriously at that company. They're literally just used her for that, and then I'm like, cool, you can keep your pension, you can do all that stuff. That's what we promised you, but you're not going to get any real work because that's all we use you for, and we can't trust you. She doesn't realize that. She doesn't know that. She's just looking out for herself. The sad part about this scene is that Dwight gets in the car and Tina comes out and sees for the second time in her life that her father is being taken away. She asks, like, are we doing this? Is this happening again? And he gets hauled off to prison while, Tina just hangs there and is broken. That piece alone is good. It's a good thread for whatever we're going to do in the future. It does not quite clean up a lot of the mistakes that sort of happened in this season finale. I think the Waltrip stuff somewhat cleans up a little too easily, but of all the things, that's the one thing that I'm the least upset about. The Chicky stuff is just terrible. Like it just feels too easy, too clean, and kind of a waste of time. There are a lot of sequences that happen in this season there's an entire episode that's mainly spent on Chicky. For it to lead nowhere just feels disingenuous, and it kind of like rubs me the wrong way. I also think that because these episodes have been around the 36 to 40-minute mark, there's a lot of meat, there's a lot of stuff left on the table. I think we could explore a lot of other things. This finale feels a little bit rushed. I think this could easily have been 48 to 50 minutes and kind of delved in a little bit more and maybe shown a piece of what started that connection before we do a 3-month jump to Dwight and Tina just being fine again. All in all, I do like the series. I do think previous commenters said before, this series struggles when it is not about Dwight. When you start dealing with the secondary characters, it doesn't feel as good because the script's not as good as a lot of the other Taylor Sheridan things. But Dwight and Stallone's performance, Dwight is sort of what keeps this going. I think We are getting a next season, so we know that. We know we'll be back. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he gets out of this. But we know that as cleanly and as easily as some of these things are just dropped into Dwight's lap, it's probably going to be something that's sort of clean and easy as well. But I think the meat of this season, the meat of the series, has always been Dwight and Stacy. That's what it began with. That's sort of what it ends with. And so while Waltrip and Chicky were always sort of characters in it, the main thing was always the yin and the yang of Dwight and Stacy. And that's what they met in the very first episode that sort of built this thing and what also wound up being the demise. So from a character arc, as far as Stacy and Dwight, the two of them, that works. It's just all the things that sort of happened around it don't quite hold up as much weight when it's all said and done. I am still excited about a second season because I think just the relationship of just the two of them is great, but it is a bit of a letdown overall for a season finale. I felt like, hey, we need to clean up some other things before we just are able to move off into the year. But those are my thoughts on the final episode of the first season of Tulsa King called Happy Trails. What did you guys think about this episode? Am I alone on this? Do you think this is a rushed episode, or that this season as a whole left a lot of things that just should have been further delved into? Or are you okay with it? Are you good with this? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. There's a Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere the place podcast. We are there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.